So let's talk about the process. Where do you even start? So just so you know, when we're talking about this timeline, the day you put in an offer until the day you get the keys can be anywhere from 3 weeks to 30 to 60 days. 3 weeks would really be if you're buying cash. 30 days is pretty quick, although people can do it with financing. 45 days is average. 60 days tends to be a little bit on the longer side, but at one point that was standard. So keep that in mind as we talk about the different steps. The first thing that you should do, and I know this sounds biased coming from me, but there is good reason for it, is consult with a buyer's agent. The buyer's agent is going to be your anchor contact throughout this process and is going to be communicating through all the different properties. So if you don't know who to go to, you go to your agent first. The other reason why this is very important is in the state of Massachusetts, a real estate agent has a fiduciary responsibility to their client. So if you were to go directly to the seller's agent, they have a fiduciary responsibility to the seller and not to you. So as they say, everything you say can and will be used against you. So as a buyer, having an agent is actually free to you, and it's really important that you have that advocate. So similar to that fiduciary responsibility, or dovetailing nicely off of that, I should say, during that first consultation with the agent, it is incredibly important that the agent presents to you what is called a Massachusetts mandatory disclosure of agency. This is not only a law in Massachusetts, it is also incredibly important because it shows that that agent is taking your rights very seriously and the law. So what it says at the top is that this is not a contract, it's a disclosure of your rights. So you should know as a consumer when you start this process that everything is that the agent has to do everything that is in your best interest. And this usually looks like in practical terms disclosing information. So you should never feel pressured, and you should always feel like this person is someone you can trust to help you with this process. So also in that first conversation, we want to talk about your buying power. Usually we talk a lot about commute. Those conversations are changing because most people are working from home indefinitely, or it seems based on talking to people, a lot of people enjoy it and they're actually negotiating with their clients to work from home indefinitely. So that is changing the conversation as to what are your must-haves and where you'd like to be. And we also want to look at your buying power. So usually in this first conversation, we talk very high level. What do you think you have in terms of a down payment? What do you think you have in terms of closing costs? I always recommend to budget about 1.5% of the purchase price and where you want to spend monthly. And we can kind of back into a budget that way and at least have a conversation about what your buying power is in different areas. Most people who I work with need to find new neighborhoods to meet all, and new neighborhoods, new cities, new towns to meet all of their must-haves. So that's part of that discussion. And then of course you do want to talk to a mortgage professional. I always say, you know, if people don't know someone, I do make recommendations. Make sure that that person is incredibly responsive. You have their cell phone number and can get in touch with them at any hour of the day and night and on the weekends. Unfortunately, real estate does not have hours. And sometimes we need to get things done at odd hours. So you will be working on the nights and weekends a little bit with me, but don't worry, I'm used to it. It's a lot of fun. You'll survive. So just make sure the person's incredibly responsive. The same thing with the attorney that you'll need later on. So when we start looking at properties, our first the first step that we want to do right now in our current environment is do as much online due diligence as possible so that we're reducing our exposure. Property moves very quickly. It's not unusual if a property has an offer accepted within days. So we just have to be quick about this. And there's great tools out now. There's really great technology for 3D tours where you can see the scratches on the floors and the walls and really get an idea of the condition of the home. And then once we're in the house, we are taking all necessary precautions, masks, of course, gloves, sometimes wearing the booties as well. and they are limiting either one party, maybe max 2 parties. So there are open houses going on right now, and there's really 2 types. You're either scheduling a 15-minute increment where you'll either be there alone or you'll be with one other party, or you're waiting outside in line waiting to be admitted into the property. So when we're viewing that property, it's incredibly important that we be very, very critical. We want to take into account the condition of the property as it relates to the value of the home, and also as it relates to your own budget. So anything that we can see with the naked eye, we want to make note of. So let's say we look at all these properties and we're ready to put in our offer. So that actually brings me to our next poll. All right, come on. Oh, here we go. So in relation, I just want to get a feel for the audience here. We're going to be talking about negotiations, which is a lot of fun. And when you think about negotiations, what do you think is the most important requirement for a successful real estate negotiation? Is it the data analysis, meaning how you present your price to the other side and the data that you have to support that? Is it showing indifference? Do you want to have a poker face? You don't want the other side to know you like the property so that they know that, you know, they have a leg up on you that way. Is it empathizing with your counterpart? You want to get into the head of your counterpart in order to communicate with them. Or is it a battle of wills? All you need to do is hold out your position long enough in order to get what you're looking for. So take a moment and answer those, and I will go back to talking about the process. So, okay. So we've talked about our negotiation strategy. You feel great about it. We put in the offer. Let's talk about what goes into that. We have a pre-approval letter. We have the mandatory disclosure, which you've already signed and you don't even think about it. We have the offer itself, which talks about the time and the money that you're going to deliver with all the different deadlines there. Your contingencies document, which is usually the inspection and the financing. And then we talk about and then of course a picture of an $1,000 check. When you're submitting the offer, it's just a picture, and you actually text this to me so that I can crop out your account information. We have to be very careful these days. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there fishing for information, particularly in real estate transactions. So texting is actually very safe, sometimes safer than email, so keep that in mind. So we submit all these documents, it gets accepted. What do we do first? Well, we need to get that check over to them because that is what legally binds your offer. Then we need to schedule the inspection. The inspection should happen within a few days of having that offer accepted. Things are very quick, and we want to make sure we have enough due diligence time to follow up on any surprises from the inspection. Simultaneously, you are engaging with an attorney who is negotiating the purchase and sale. Once we've done the inspection, we've added any additional negotiating points if that comes up with the inspection. All of that is incorporated into the purchase and sale. And this can happen about 7 days after the offer is accepted. It can happen sooner than that or later than that, but on average, it's about 7 days. And again, we're talking days, not business days. So after the purchase, or at the time, I should say, the purchase and sale is signed, your second deposit is due. This is 5% of the purchase price minus $1,000. So held in an escrow account, usually by the listing agent's office, is 5% of the purchase price. So it's very important that you know that it's in escrow. It doesn't get disseminated to the seller until we close. And there are inflection points where you can get that back. For example, the inspection. If something goes wrong with the inspection, you get your $1,000 back. And if you can't get your mortgage commitment date, you get your 5% back. So that brings me to my next point, is the mortgage commitment date. So about 30 days into the transaction, about 3 weeks from the purchase and sale, is your mortgage commitment date. This is very important. It protects that 5%. What your commitment means is that the bank, no matter what, is going to give you a loan for this. So it's very important that we're doing everything we can to meet this deadline. Depending on whether you have a 30-day closing or a 45 or a 60-day closing, you might have your closing a few days after the mortgage commitment date, or it could be a week or so later. So At the day before closing or the day of closing, we usually will do the final walkthrough. That's when we test everything, we make sure everything is working. And then you basically sign a stack of documents about this thick, and you own a house. You get the keys and you own a house. And I usually take people out to the Harvard Club for lunch after that. So hopefully lunch will be back since we don't close at night.